Want to write something like this is my first PHP variable, and remember that after you write your variable, perhaps after you write any statement inside PHP, you need to end that statement along you need to end that statement with a semicolon. Suppose you want to see suppose you want to see that you want to see this value being printed out on your web server, web browser, sorry. So you just need to echo this out, erase this, then write home page, and let's save this. Let's get back to our browser. Okay, it's already there. Here you go. So your server is running successfully. It's running successfully, and it's printing out, or it's calling the index.php page from your projects folder, and then it's printing out the value that you've stored inside this variable. So a variable is essentially nothing more than a storage space. Now suppose the reason we use a variable is that suppose you need to use a similar value. Like if you store a number like a number 2, or suppose you store a number that's big, relatively big, like I guess this is 200, then you have 200,000. Okay, now suppose you want to print that value. If you want to include this number in 10 different places for your calculation, now you can just write the name of the variable instead of writing this value directly. The reason we do that is because if you need to change that value in 10 different places, you need to do that for that will be a really tedious job, because you will have to change this 200,000. Suppose you have to change this 200,000 to 400,000. We'll have to, if you don't use a variable, we'll have to make the change in 10 different places. But if you use a variable and you use that variable's name in 10 different places rather than the actual value by itself, then when you need to make the change, suppose you need to make the change to 200,000 to 400,000, then you need to change the value just in one place. Like, let me show you one example. Home page plus home page. Then I'm actually doing simple arithmetic here. Home page. Okay. Then dividing. Then multiplying. Okay, here you go. Now I could have gone to use 200,000 directly like this. 200,000. I guess it's not 200,000, is it? Yeah. Okay, fine. There are 5 zeros. Yeah, fine. Now I could have done this. I could have done this in all other places. The reason I'm not doing this, suppose it happens that you need to change this 200,000 to 400,000, like 400. There are 5 zeros. Okay, so you just need to make the change in one place, and it will change. Your computer or your compiler behind the scenes will change that value automatically, rather than you being changing it in 10 different places. Like there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There are 8 different. You need to change the values in 8 different places. So rather than changing it 8 times, you just change it one time, and the computer will do the rest for you. So that's why we are using a variable. The next thing we need to learn about PHP is how to use or create an array. Now an array is more of like a variable, but an array is actually a sorted collection of variables. It's a list. You you might wonder why do we need a list inside a programming language if you're new to this programming constructs or this programming language. So the reason we use an array is to create a list. So in our daily life, we do create a lot of lists. Suppose you go for shopping, you go for buying stuff for your household, you go for like you might buy things, you might buy a collection of food. So when you want to buy several stuff together, you might be someone who is very organized, and you before going out to buy things, you just write what you need to buy on a piece of paper. You make a list. So that's exactly like making a list inside a programming language. So suppose an array is created using in a similar fashion, but it uses a different construct when we try to store the values. So an array, suppose I create an array of pages. Let me name this as pages. So there are two ways of creating an array. So this is actually an array. You can see the similarity in here. This is a variable and this is an array. Now the array also needs to have a name. So the name needs to be preceded, or it needs to have a $sign before the name. So you can write anything as the name, but your name needs to be preceded with a $sign. And then the values that will be stored inside this array needs to be assigned using this assignment operator. Now a single equals to means an assignment operator. An assignment operator is essentially something like you're storing or you're assigning this 400,000 to this variable called home page. You're storing this number inside this variable. So this assignment, when the compiler or when your computer when it tries to read your code, it will, when it sees this single equals to sign or single equals to symbol, it will then look into the value that's on the right hand side. It will look into the right hand operand. This is also known as an operand. So it will look into this operand, it will take that operand and it will create a certain space inside your RAM, and it will store that inside. It will store this value inside your RAM along with the name as home page. So whenever you call this a name, your compiler or your computer will definitely understand that you are trying to access this value 400,000 and you're trying to do something with that value. So it will go back to your RAM and it will look into that specific space where it has stored that value. It will then retrieve that value and it will then place that value in your program. So likewise, an array is actually like that, but inside array we create a list. Suppose there are two ways to create an array. Either you use this square brackets, you just place the square brackets, and then at the end of this array construct you just provide a semicolon. Now because this array is empty, it won't print anything. So to use this array, what we can do, we can just write home or home page. Then we can write, because I created 4 pages on the website that I've shown you, then I can use those names in here. Services page, then I had a galleries page, yeah, and then I got a contact page. So I'm writing this on a new line, but you can definitely write it like this. Yeah, you can definitely go for this. So this is also correct. Your array will work if you write that on a new line. If you write that in a single line, it will both work. Now there is another way of writing this array and perhaps there are two ways to write this array. The first way is actually the old way, but the other way is using a key value pair. So the old way of writing this is also applicable. You can definitely